The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
You feel like you're doing a great job, right? Is that what you're saying?
We're doing our level best in a very challenging.
What does that mean? What does that mean when a child is sitting in their own feces, can't take a shower? Come on, man. What's that about? None of us would have our children in that position. They are human beings. And I'm trying to figure out, and I get tired of folks saying, oh, they just beating up on the Border Patrol. Oh, they just beating up on Homeland Security. Now, what I'm saying is I want to concentrate on these children. And I want to make sure that they are okay. I will say it, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's not the deed that you do to a child, it's the memory.
That's right.
It's the memory.
That was the voice of Congressman Elijah Cummings, who passed away this morning at around 2:45. That was one of his last speeches before the Congress back in June, when he, you heard it for yourself, how he eviscerated Border Patrol because of how they were treating human beings at the border, particularly children. According to the office of Elijah Cummings, he passed away due to long-term health conditions at the age of 68. Born in 1951. 68 is still young. My father passed away at 61. And there's, I don't know anything about his health condition, but I do know that black men die early. That's just a sad reality. And he passed away at 68. And I used to think 68 was old. Hell, I used to think my dad was relatively old when he passed away, but that's not old. That's young. And but I mean, never mind the mortality. Our mortality rates. We'll have to talk about that at another time. But Elijah Cummings was a powerhouse, and he served in Congress, I believe, since 1996. A graduate of Howard University, an HBCU. The quintessential black politician, man. You heard it in his voice, speaking with a fierceness that is born out of the black religious experience. And he's definitely going to be missed. That's not the kind of news I wanted to wake up to this morning. But he had been in the hospital for some time. He left to have a surgery. And when he left to have the surgery, they expected him to only be out for a week. And he never recovered. And he passed away this morning. I want to listen to one more clip in that same speech from Elijah Cummings.
And so, and I told the head of Border Patrol the other day, I said, I want to know what's happening in the meantime. We are the United States of America. We are the greatest country in the world. We are the ones that can go anywhere in the world and save people. Make sure that they have diapers. Make sure that they have toothbrushes. Make sure that they're not laying around defecating in some silver paper. Come on. We're better than that.
Our hope, my sincerest hope is that we're better than that. And you know, sometimes you have to speak. Well, this is a straight up religious. What I'm getting ready to say is straight up from the church. Sometimes you have to speak those things that be not as though they were. You know, America isn't better than that. But I believe that Cummings was speaking that so that America can become better than that. You know, it's like that slave owner, Thomas Jefferson, you know, when he said all men are created equal. Well, clearly that wasn't true. We're still fighting for that today. And so even though we're not what Elijah Cummings hoped that we were, I do believe that people like him can help us to become that. Or else why are we doing any of this? I said yesterday, I'm still naive enough to believe that justice will prevail, that justice will win. I have to believe that. You know, that's the fervor that we hear in his voice. He has to believe that America is better than that. And we have to believe that we can make America better than that. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, we can't just sit around and long for the day that America is destroyed because of all the things that it's done. We're just not that we're beyond that point in the development of human civilization. America has to become better. America must become what it says and we think and they think it is. It has to become that. It must, because if it doesn't, you know, we are at a stage, and I don't know, I'm not talking about Elijah Cummings anymore, but I want to speak to that thing that he said, right? He said that America is better than that. That's hopeful. That wasn't reflective of where we are, because we're literally doing the things that he said that we are better than. But man, if we don't have any hope, and if we don't actively work towards making America better by being truthful about who we are, by being truthful about what we've done, and then most importantly, being sober about where we need to go. If we can't do that, man, that doesn't bode well for humanity. It doesn't. There's too many things wrapped up. But anyway, that's not the point of today's show. Today's show, so many things to cover. But I had to pause and take a minute to reflect. I had a lot of respect for Representative Cummings. I never had a chance to meet him. I don't think I did. I've been to quite a few functions. I'm sure he was at one that I was at, but I never got a chance to meet him in person. And he was a powerful man, and he will certainly be missed.
In the meantime, we are the United States of America. We're better than that.
All right, let's talk some politics. I apologize for the abrupt shift, but it was bound to be abrupt. There was really no way for me to not make it an abrupt shift. So a couple of things. Let's talk about the primaries. Yesterday, I saw something fascinating, which is comical, but interesting. I saw a lot of people trying to minimize the significance of the endorsement from Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsing Bernie Sanders. And apparently there's some confusion over if and when Rashida Tlaib is going to endorse Bernie Sanders. So she's let it be known that she has not endorsed him yet, but she is making an appearance with him in Detroit in the coming days. But what happened was so many people are trying to reduce and minimize the impact of AOC and Ilhan Omar. Now, here's the thing. AOC, I'm going to take a sidestep here for a moment to talk about the two of them individually, and then I'll talk about them in context of their endorsement. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is probably the most sophisticated social media politician in the game. Now, this isn't to reduce and minimize her abilities, what she's done, what she accomplishes in Congress, the way she rips them, the testimonies that she just devastates not only Republicans, but also industry leaders and heads of departments with her questioning. So I'm not reducing or erasing that, but I would say she's more sophisticated on social media than just about anyone else in the game. And that matters because, man, her reach is significant. However, Ilhan Omar, to me, is the truth. And the reason I think she's the truth, because she takes on battles that AOC will not take on. AOC is, she does triangulate and she has her eyes on the White House, and there's nothing wrong with ambition. That's just the way, that's why people get into politics, right? But because of that, she doesn't take on fights that Ilhan Omar takes on. And we've seen that play out on social media. That's why I framed the entire conversation in terms of social media. But both of them combined represent a new face and a new direction for the Democratic Party. And it's both of them combined. They have a significant voice that the establishment has been trying to silence since they were elected almost 2 years ago. And they represent exactly what has to be done in order to solidify a legitimate left in this country that has power. We have a left, but we have a left in this country that has been, whether they admit it or not, they've been satisfied with being out of power. I'll just say simply, they've been satisfied with critiquing the government from the outside and not being in the government in order to change the government. This is a significant shift. And now we do have a chance for a legitimate, an actual left. Not quite as scary as Republicans try to make them seem, because they're not full-fledged communists and they're not even full-fledged socialists, but they most certainly are further to the left than any establishment politician in the game. So the endorsement makes a significant difference because of that. They do represent the bench, the backup for Bernie Sanders. As soon as they are old enough. I love the fact that they are so young that we have to wait until they get old enough to run for president. But Ilhan Omar, she's a refugee. She's not born in America, so she can't run. But hell, she can serve in the cabinet. But I love that they are so young that they have years ahead of them that really, will sharpen them, that they will be able to carry on. I mean, last year, I used to always say, where are the leaders? Where's the next generation? Those are they are them. And so the endorsement means a lot, not only in terms of rallying people, because they do have a significant following. They have a significant voice. They are able to make headlines. They're able to break through the media news cycle and insert themselves into the cycle for whatever purposes they have. And also they represent the future of leftism in the United States of America that is in power. Now, the rest of the left continue to do what you do, right? But there are going to be those who step up and step into the fray. And that's what's happening with AOC and Ilhan Omar. So for that reason alone, everyone who's trying to minimize the impact of these endorsements, you're out of you're ridiculous. You're fatuous. You're disingenuous. Because had AOC endorsed Elizabeth Warren, who I don't care what you say, I still love Elizabeth Warren, and I hope she gets the VP spot. But had she endorsed Elizabeth Warren, it would have been world-changing, groundbreaking news. So let's be sure about that. But the establishment is starting to lose its grip, and that's necessary, because we've seen so many times where the establishment has dropped the ball, and they have been dropping the ball since they started moving towards this third way centrism Democrat, that democratic establishment mentality that they have had since, the 80s, the late 70s. It's been a long time coming, and now we finally have a chance to solidify a legitimate left that is in power and capable of making changes. And so once again, I will repeat, that is exactly why those endorsements are so significant.
Outtake.
And this is not, I'm not mother. I'm in the mother. Yes, mother.
Good morning, Benjamin.
Outtake.
Good Lord. Yes, Jada.
It's not me.
Oh, hello, Jeremiah. Bye, Jeremiah. I'll call you back later, Jay. All right.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
That actually happens quite often, even though I generally live with my phone on Do Not Disturb. But obviously, like family, they can get through. And I just thought I would leave that in there. Anyway, at this point in the show, I always recognize our newest patrons. And from the looks of it, I did not get any new patrons last night. And I'm lonely, brokenhearted. Life's not over. I can start again. Somebody tweet me who sings that song. Anyway, but thanks to the current patrons, man, you guys rock. All of you, ladies and gentlemen and non-gender conforming individuals who support my show, you rock. And so if you want to join that crew, www.patreon.com/The BPD Show. I'm going to upload a video today that I think you'll like. Okay. One last story, and it's about Syria, northern Syria, but particularly about the domestic side of those politics. Lindsey Graham sent out a thread of tweets yesterday that I want to comment on. And, let me just read it. First, he said, when it comes to America's national security, I will never be quiet. Mr. President, forget about what I'm saying about Syria. Listen to your own national security team who are telling you the consequences of your decision and the impact it will have on our nation. President Trump is being told exactly what President Obama was told before he withdrew from Iraq. He appears to be hell-bent on making the same mistakes in Syria as President Obama made in Iraq. Okay. The worst thing any commander-in-chief can do is to give land back to the enemy that was taken through blood and sacrifice. I fear those are consequences of the actions being taken right now. Okay. So this was Lindsey Graham yesterday. Lindsey Graham is a bootlicking fascist, right? Let's be clear. The reason Donald Trump is so free to do whatever the hell he wants to do right now is because Republicans like Lindsey Graham prostrated themselves in front of him. They kneeled down before the throne of Donald Trump. And, whereas it's going to be interesting and probably comical to see how this plays out when Donald Trump gets through with Lindsey Graham. I find it interesting now to see him having at least a sliver of a spine enough to stand up to Donald Trump. But look at where he stands. He doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't care about the children at the border. Nah. His support for white supremacy. No. His hurting of the working class. Nah. The only thing Lindsey Graham actually cares about is his ability and capacity to not only make war, wage war, but also to have permanent military installations across the entire globe. Basically, the expansion of the military industrial complex and American imperialism. Now, while I agree that we should not have pulled out those 50 troops from northern Syria precisely because the only reason they were there was not to commit regime change war, like Tulsi Gabbard intentionally erroneously spoke. They were there as a hedge against the Turkish military forces from coming in and doing exactly what they're doing, which is ethnic cleansing. This is not, listen, and this is not, and here's the other thing. There's so many angles on this that I got to hit them all. Leftists and so-called progressive commentators who think that the only thing that's wrong with this decision is that Turkey is doing what they're doing in Syria. Donald Trump, this is not an anti-war move. Those troops are not being brought home. We are, in fact, sending more troops to the region to support our buddies in Saudi Arabia, who quite literally are the reason that we are in the situation that we're in now with this never-ending war on terror, because 19 of their citizens flew planes into the Twin Towers. So we're sending more troops. And we have some people on the left who are giving cover to Donald Trump because they are feigning as though this is an act of anti-war, but it's not. In fact, it is leading directly to the death of so many people. And I guess I just can't. There are weird intersections. There are going to be strange bedfellows that happen from time to time. I actually agree. I agree with the underlying sentiment, or rather, let me say precisely, because we have people out there who like to clip my videos and use it out of context, so-called journalists. But if those troops had stayed in Turkey, like Lindsey Graham said, in northern Syria, like Lindsey Graham said, then we would not have about 1,000 dead Kurds on our hands right now, who are being killed for nothing more than the desire of Turkey to suppress and oppress the Kurdish people and not allow them to have their own autonomy. And what I've seen is fascinating. I see people on the left relentlessly vilifying anyone who unfortunately finds himself on the same side as America. Like, I literally see people who a few years ago stood with Kurds, now vilifying the Kurds and saying, oh, we shouldn't have been there in the first place and let them work that out. Like, I mean, and while it's not a lot of people, the one thing I have learned the hard lesson of is when you see BS and you see it slowly but surely spreading, you have to address it head on right away before it metastasizes. Okay, so let me give just a little more context before I finish this particular conversation. I'm recording this again because I want to make sure that I'm clear on what I'm saying. First and foremost, I have to couch this conversation in this caveat or this pretext. It's extremely important that everyone has a circle of people who can disagree with them. And I have several circles that I run in online and in real life of people who vehemently disagree with me. They have sharpened me. They have. I don't always agree with them. Matter of fact, that's why we disagree so hard. Just to be specific, like I referenced two people last week who helped me on the issue of transgender issues, right? On my transphobia, Pam and Kevin. I mean, they relentlessly pounded me until it got into my head. Then I have online Twitter, and this is a group that I'm actually talking about specifically. We disagreed so much yesterday on China. Man, you would have thought we would fight each other when we see each other. But when we see each other, we're going to hang out because that's what we do. We're able to disagree with each other to the top of our lungs. They believe China's socialist. I believe it's capitalist. They believe China is anti-imperialist. I firmly stand on the fact that I know an empire when I see it. Like, I'm not going to make that argument because that's not what this is about. I'm trying to give you the context of what I'm getting ready to say. Also, another person in real life who here in Atlanta, Anoa Changa, we disagree so much that you would think we were enemies, but we sharpen each other. And in the context of the conversation we had yesterday on China, in that sharpening, we're both making each other's arguments sharper. I came to a realization that I don't think I've ever said publicly that I think is worthwhile in the context of the conversation of northern Syria. A lot of context, but context matters, despite the fact that some people are going to chop up the show and try to share it and soundbite it and give it a different context. But that's just me being petty. Here's what I realized in the sharpening that took place with my homeboys who disagree with me on China. I do not care about ideas in the abstract. I don't care about pursuing socialism in the abstract or even in reality when it costs the lives of, or it requires us to turn a blind eye to people who I otherwise would stand in solidarity with. This is what I mean. The number one issue, the number one reason I do politics, and the number one reason I'm a religious person, like what brought me back to religion and what keeps me in politics, is the fact that I care about people, individuals, every nation, every race, every ethnicity. Not so much white supremacists, they can die. But besides them, and besides the evil people who operate and cause death and destruction, I actually care about the people who are on the receiving end of that death and destruction. The reason I oppose the military industrial complex, the reason I oppose American imperialism is not because I am a principled anti-war, principled anything. I care about the results of that system. The fact that when we engage in war, it means that thousands, hundreds of thousands, and oftentimes millions of people are going to die. And in every single one of those individuals that are on the receiving end of American bombs, they are real people with real stories, real lives, actual pain, actual sorrow. Every one of those 1 million Iraqis that we killed had a story. They had family. They had friends. I mean, we are responsible for a level of death and destruction and sorrow that has covered our hands with so much blood that America, anytime our chickens come home to roost, we should just nod our head and say, yeah, that's about right. But I care about the people. And so if I care about the people on the receiving end of American military and military industrial complex, then you should believe that I am going to care about people who are on the receiving end of the oppression in China. And the people who are on the receiving end of the oppression in China are real people with real stories. And if I was in that nation, I would resist and rebel as well. And so that's why I find myself more often than not on the side of the oppressed. And I'm wise enough, and I've been in this game long enough to be able to sort between those people who are feigning oppression simply to gain power. Kind of like Christians here in the United States, they feign oppression in order to maintain power. We have the ability to do that. But but I think it's important that you understand my perspective. This doesn't have to be your perspective as my listener, right? You can create your own worldview and your own principled order of operations. But for me, my order of operations is that every individual on the face of this planet has the right to live and the right to live without fear and the right to express their opinions without becoming a political prisoner or without being so brutally oppressed that you have to become an exile. You have to leave your country. Excuse me. And one of the things that I absolutely know is if you put me in any of these situations, I would be on the side of the oppressed. I would rebel. And so I have to. I don't even if, and here's a little more further context for you to understand. There are some people who believe in socialism so much that they are willing to engage in the same behaviors as American imperialism just to do it in the name of socialism. And no, that's not me. Because if we have to cause death and destruction in order to deliver socialism to the world, then I have betrayed the very reason I oppose the military industrial complex, the reason I oppose American imperialism. You know, the reason I'm not going to exchange one overlord for another. I'm not going to exchange one brutalizer for another. Why would we fight so vehemently against oppression that America causes across the globe simply to turn a blind eye to other people who are speaking out and fighting against their own government? You cannot say workers of the world unite and then turn a blind eye to the working class in other nations just because you feel like the enemy of America is your friend. And if we had this conversation in the context of China, you would understand that China is not the enemy of America. China is the collaborator with America. And so we should most certainly be standing with the working class of China. And we should also recognize an empire when we see one. What China is doing in Africa, while we can argue about the subtle differences. Wait. Let me say this correctly. What China is doing in Africa is entirely different than what colonialists did in Africa. However, what China is doing in Africa is expanding their diplomatic reach, their political reach, and their military reach, as well as gaining access to plenty of resources. But more than that, what they're doing in Africa is creating the infrastructure so that they can use cheap labor in Africa the way we use cheap labor in China. And let me tell you something. If I'm going to be on the side, or if I'm going to stand in opposition to capitalism as we have it in America, you sure as hell better believe I'm going to stand against it as they are doing it in China, especially when it causes oppression. So if you need to understand where I'm coming from, ever understand that I don't particularly care. I'm not so loyal to socialism that I can turn a blind eye to oppression being caused in other parts of this world. I can't. That's not me. Now, I'm not saying that's who you have to be, but you have to understand the context. When you listen to my show, you're going to always find me siding with oppressed people, no matter who's doing the oppression. And in the case of northern Syria, literally removing 50 to 100 troops that were there for the exact purposes of keeping Turkey from committing ethnic cleansing. That is not an anti-war move. And even if it was an anti-war move, it has led to thousands of people, individuals with real stories, real lives. And that's what matters to me. That may not matter to you. It may matter to you that we just be true to socialism. That may be your story, but that's not my story. And our move, Donald Trump's move, has caused death and destruction. And every single one of them matter to me. All right. So that's it, folks. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.